I asked Daniel very simply, how bad can it get for Georgia in 2025? He gives me the answer next. Locked On Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. He is Daniel. I am Clint. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money, monarchmoney.com. More on them in a moment. We appreciate everybody who is a first-time listener. If you're here for the first time, thank you so much. Everydayers and first listeners. If you wake up in the morning and you got to get going by listening to this podcast over on YouTube as well, we thank you guys so very much. Today's episode, Daniel answers the question, how bad can it get for Georgia? And also answer this question, how important is this particular recruiting class that the heater that Kirby's on? How important is it for the longevity of Georgia's program? We get to that in a little bit. But first, Daniel, I just simply ask you. You asked me yesterday, how bad can it get? I gave you a worst case scenario of 3, maybe 4 losses on the season. I gave you Tennessee, week 3, week 4, Alabama. Then I said, taking a loss, as much as it pains to say, and it sucks to say, can I see us going on a 4-game heater before you losing the cocktail party? I can. And then losing to Texas. And that's feasibly in our purview. But now I want the people to get your opinion on it, Daniel. What do you think is the worst case scenario reasonable for Georgia in 2025?
Okay. First of all, there's no need to ask a novice when there's an expert in worst case scenarios right here. Okay. So it is a question that I need to answer, that I must answer before every season, that I do walk myself down this road every season. And I'll just be honest with you, by the time we get to August 31st, Clint, this will no longer be the worst case scenario. This will be the only possible outcome. Like this is the way that fans, we will get ourselves to the lowest place imaginable.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were not wrong in the way that the worst case scenario begins. It does begin with a loss in Knoxville in week 3. Okay. Now, in that loss in Knoxville, let me set the stage before that, though, because I think we just skip over these first 2 games in worst case scenario, because obviously we're not losing either of these first 2 games in a worst case scenario. Let me tell you the worst case scenario, Clint.
Go ahead.
63-0 week 1, 58-0 week 2. Georgia is absolutely looks like a blazing inferno of suns.
We are rolling.
Like the offense clicking on all cylinders. We're talking about 80-yard touchdown drives of 1 play, 2 plays. We're talking about 10 sacks per game. Georgia's averaging. Defensive scores in bunches. And then you go on the road to Knoxville in week 3 and you lose. You take an L on the chin. Josh Heupel, cover your ears, John Tweed Sports. Josh Heupel scores over 20 points against Kirby Smart. And now what are we going to talk about? What's the talking point? Let me tell you something about Kirby Smart. He can't win the big one.
Can't do it.
That's the talking point. Until he can win the big. Let me tell you something about Ryan Day, Clint. He can't win the big one until he does win the big one. And Michigan gets to celebrate their national championship of beating Ohio State when Ohio State won the actual national championship. But I digress. Georgia loses to Tennessee, and then Georgia comes back home bye week licking its wounds, and Georgia takes an L to Alabama. Now, you didn't dwell here for as long as I necessarily thought you should have, but let me, for the record, state that in this scenario, Georgia, your University of Georgia, the University of Georgia, would be 2-2 on the football season, and the only 2 wins that we would possess would be against the likes of, let's just say, some teams that we don't need to be bragging about beating 2-2, Clint. And I shudder. I shudder to think what this podcast is going to look like if that is the scenario. We're already not pleasant to look at on YouTube.
Nope.
But I can promise you're going to want to stick to audio at that point.
Yeah.
That's the reality that we're living in. Now, we move on from there, and I think absolutely Georgia is going to beat Kentucky. I think absolutely Georgia's going to beat Auburn, even though it could be something there. Worst case scenario, but I'm not going to go there because people are just going to call me an idiot. And I think Georgia's going to beat Ole Miss. I've told you I don't think Lane. I think the window is closed on Lane Kiffin, and it's about to come crashing down. Cocktail party, Clint. That's the one that hurts. That's the one that absolutely hurts. And there's no way in this world you can convince me that the worst case scenario doesn't involve a Georgia loss at the cocktail party. There's no such thing as a Georgia football worst case scenario that doesn't involve a loss at the cocktail party. So if you're not putting a loss at the cocktail party in there, let me spoil it for you. You're not talking about the worst case scenario, because
no, sir,
it could get way worse. And that would be if my man Clint had to go on a squad show with some little boy and listen to him talk about the Florida Gators and how they just beat up on Georgia. That would be the worst case scenario.
The Chili's incident doesn't compare.
No, you can't get thrown out of a squad show the way we got thrown out of that Chili's. You need Justin B. Tweeten to be with you as your legal counsel in that squad show. You're going to need it. So that's worst case scenario. Now, Clint, I love the bravado. I love the swagger. But of course, a worst case scenario involves a loss to Florida. Okay. Or a loss to Texas. Okay. So now we're up to 4 losses. Georgia is now 5-4 on the season.
Go ahead. Go. Okay. Let's keep going, Daniel.
Texas, in a worst case scenario, is a loss. And you might say to yourself, well, 8-4, Daniel, that's pretty bad. Let me stop you right there. Because I think what you thought I said was give me a pretty bad scenario. No. But what I actually said was give me all the bacon and eggs you have. What I actually said was give me the worst case scenario. And I will tell you that the worst case scenario's name is Brent Key. That's his name. And Georgia could, on the freaking flats, by the way, with Clint and I in attendance on Black Friday. Am I painting a salient enough picture for you here, Clint?
There's not enough water in the stadium.
No, they don't. I will be bringing a hydration vest, an IV. If you see a guy wheeling an IV stand around the flats, like down MLK, like that will be me. That's where I'll be there. It won't be enough. That's the worst case scenario. Georgia goes 7-5. Now, is Georgia going to go 7-5? Of course, they're not going to go 7-5. But I'm here to tell you that each one of those games that I just described is a losable game. It is a possible loss. And that is why the worst case scenario has to be you lose all of them. If it's a possible loss, then there has to be at least a scenario in which you lose all of those games. And so
in some of those games you listed, Daniel, the line right now has Georgia near double-digit favorites in those games.
You listed a scenario where if Georgia's 7-0, they might be a 14.5-point favorite against Florida going into the cocktail party.
And if that's the case, we won't have them on locks because your boys will be making money on that bet.
Whoops.
We can't sense what I'm saying?
Can't give out the picks that make money for us all the time on locks, if you know what we're saying. Yeah. That's the worst case scenario, Clint. 7-5. I don't know.
You hate to see it. We're gonna.
You better talk to me about recruiting and how things are going for Georgia in a minute, because if you don't, we're gonna lose all the listeners to this podcast, which we will figure out if we did right after these.
These are, in fact, Monarch Money I wish managing money was easier. Well, guess what?
I wish a lot of things were easier, Clint.
Guess what? Big purchases and managing finances. Monarch Money puts you right in the driver's seat. It's like your own personal CFO. It's more than just budgeting. It's complete financial command center. You don't just manage your money. You're building wealth. How's having everything in one app going to be great? I'll tell you how. I don't have to go from this website to that website or this bank to that bank or credit card here, credit card there with this business. Guess what? You enter all the information, it collects it all. You're able to watch your pay stubs come in, what's going out, and start tracking your spending to get it under control. Take control of your finances, Monarch Money. Use promo code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com. 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year.
All right, Clint, you got another question for me teed up. Give it to me now. I'm going to ask you the question in the third segment. I'll circle back to you, but where are we going to go next?
Here's my question for you, Daniel. It has to do with recruiting. This heater that Kirby Smart is on, I have said it's a defining year from Georgia. Now, why I think it's a defining year is for the first time in Kirby Smart's era, we have seen a hit in culture. Every previous year, we were building up and up and up with classes, with guys, with coaching, and we took a hit this last year because culture took a negative downspin. There was more disgruntled in conversations, more guys that had a foot in the transfer portal, more guys that were talking about that. More news was leaking out of Georgia than I had seen previous. Now, we can blame Carson Beck as much as we want. I think he was a main proponent of it, but I think there were some others existing things. People got satisfied. Kirby Smart talks about being satisfied all the time. If you're not hunting, you're being hunted. And that's what happened. I said that this year is pivotal, not only on the field, but it's also pivotal in recruiting, Daniel, because to me, so far, Kirby's getting back to basics, back to what made Georgia, Georgia with this class in particular. Daniel, where does this recruiting class rank in importance for Kirby Smart's era? Is it top 3? Is it continuing something good? Am I putting too much importance on this year, including the recruiting class of 2026? Am I making too big of a deal of it? Or would you say, yeah, this is important. This is a top 3 recruiting class of Kirby Smart era, the most important one he's had. What do you say?
Let me start with a bit of a qualification. I don't think it's the most important recruiting class that he has had, although I can see a perspective that you are coming from as you say that. Okay. Now, we all know that recruiting services are not perfect. We all know that the people get the stars wrong. We all know that some 5 stars turn out to be busts. We all know that some 3 stars get developed by Kirby Smart and make it to the NFL. Like, we all know that is a thing that happens. But I think recruiting services paint a broad picture for us that is generally true about the overall level of talent in a program. And
very true.
There is no one in college football other than the late, great Nick Saban. I'm aware that Nick Saban is not deceased. There's no one in college football who has ever been more consistently excellent at a thing than Kirby Smart is at recruiting. 2016, we all know his first year in Athens, Clint. May I begin in 2017?
Go right ahead.
And list for you the recruiting ranking of each year according to 24/7.
Go right ahead.
3rd, 2nd.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry. 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 1st, 3rd, 2nd, and this year we currently sit at 2nd for 2026. The cycle's not over yet. Tyler Atkinson yet to commit. 1st is still well within reach. Georgia just doesn't waver. They don't flinch. They don't have off years in terms of talent acquisition. And so this recruiting class, because of that, this recruiting class is no more, no less important than any of the other recruiting classes under Kirby Smart, because that's the philosophy. The philosophy is you do not settle. You do not rest. You only always continue to stockpile talent. And as long as that doesn't drop off, Kirby has been very adamant in saying there's nothing special about the way he coaches. There's nothing special about the scheme, about the system. Players win games. You have to have the best players. That is the philosophy under Kirby Smart. That is the philosophy that has been held by all of the great college football coaches. Talent wins college football championships, period.
Correct.
And so this recruiting class just as important as all the others because you just can't have a drop-off. There's just no room to have a drop-off in this day and age. Now, where this class becomes increasingly important is in the work Kirby has done outside of those high school rankings that I just named. What you're seeing from Kirby Smart is the willingness to adapt in the transfer portal, the willingness to utilize the transfer portal to his advantage, unlike somebody like Dabo Swinney, who's being passed by and left behind by college football, and everyone's excited about Clemson and how they might make a run at it this year. And I say to you,
Cade Klubnik is not who you think he is.
I don't know about that because I hope you don't have an injury because you just don't have the overall pool of talent that all of these other programs do. Kirby has shown the willingness to use the transfer portal to fill key holes. You look at what he did at safety this year. Look at what he did at wide receiver this year. Look at what he's done at wide receiver in the past. Look at what he's done at defensive back in the past. Look at how he's brought in guys at key positions to play pivotal roles to make the team better. Even going back to bringing in quarterbacks in the portal, but some of them were good for Georgia, which, I mean, we laugh all the time about how Stetson Bennett stole JT Daniels' job and JT Daniels didn't. But before that, JT Daniels was good for Georgia, and it was important that he was here. He was a positive player on Georgia's team. And so Kirby Smart's willingness to adapt, to continue to use all the avenues at his disposal continues to be what sets him apart from all the other coaches in college football. I do think that the closer we get to regulations on NIL and NIL spending, yes. I've said it before and I'll continue to say it, the more you even the playing field, the more Kirby Smart will dominate because he's better. He's just better. And so if somebody else, like if two guys are going to get in a fight and one of them's not allowed to have a knife, then the tougher, stronger, better guy is going to win. It turns out Kirby wins against guys with knives consistently anyway.
All the time.
But if you take away the knife, then it's not really, it's going to become more and more lopsided, which is what we've seen in the past when Georgia was stacking number one recruiting classes. And I think you're going to see it again as legislation continues. So is this recruiting class the most important under Kirby Smart? Yes. Is it any more important than any of the other classes? No. Like that's the simple answer to the question.
Every single year, it's important. Every single year, it's more important. Every single time you need to get an infusion of talent because you only have 3 years with the majority of these kids. You get 33% shot at having a roster that's good. You need them in there. I think it is interesting, this recruiting cycle, some of the key components, having the number one quarterback in the nation. You can keep your guy Tennessee. I don't want him. I don't care. And that's not because, well, it is partly because he's not at Georgia. That is part of it. But I would be saying, I really like Curtis's game before that. You have tackles who are top in their position group. You have linebackers, defensive linemen. I mean, the key components that Georgia hit before Kirby's doing again. Daniel, give people a little tease of what you're going to ask me when we come back.
Well, I'm going to revisit an old subject because it keeps getting brought up in the comments. And so I feel like we need to keep talking about it. The old subject's name is Gunnar Stockton, and we're going to talk about him next.
You said it was a subject that keeps getting brought up. I wanted you to just tell definitively to the people, yes, he spends 30 minutes on the hair before
Chris.
The podcast. Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Marler.
In answer to your question, Chris, yes, the hair is real and it's spectacular. You can call my hair Sidra if you'd like. Is Chris Marler old enough to understand that reference? He's not. It's actually, not likely that he is.
He might.
He might be. He might be older than. He might be in his mid-50s. I can't tell. I honestly can't tell. Who is to say? Let's talk about Gunnar Stockton, Clint, because it doesn't matter what you say about this young man. You're dead wrong.
Yeah.
You say that he's the worst quarterback in the league. You're an idiot. You say that he's going to surprise people and he doesn't deserve to be ranked 10th or 11th in the SEC. All of a sudden, the comments start pouring in, Clint, that give me a break. He's played 6 quarters of college football.
Sure.
There's nothing about him that's a sure thing. There's no reasons for optimism that you could possibly have. Clint, let's revisit. There might be some new listeners here. Sure, maybe we've forgotten. It's important to review key concepts that we've gone over in the past. Okay,
great.
This is like, what are those things called where like Penn and Teller will teach you magic tricks? Like a master class. That's what this is. This is a master class on being a Georgia fan. That's what this podcast is. In fact, can we brand it that way? Let's get a sponsor. Let's get let's do some research. Let's get on that. Okay. This is a masterclass on how to be a Georgia fan. So we need to review some key concepts. Clint,
here we go.
Give some data points for why it is unwarranted for people to believe that Gunnar Stockton is definitely the next great quarterback for Georgia and is inevitably that they shouldn't be worried at all. And at the same time, give some data points for why no one should be sleeping on Gunnar Stockton or be surprised when, in fact, he is very good for Georgia. In other words, what I'm asking you to do is be fair and reasonable on this podcast, something that we only do all the time.
I have been accused of nothing but that, Daniel, in my entire life, is to be level-headed about football. When people think about that, they think, okay, let me give you the case against Gunnar Stockton being the next great hope. He's not even the best version of a Gunnar Stockton we've seen at Georgia. Let's just start with that, okay?
Yeah.
Because you want to say dual threat, a guy who can run. First of all, if you're using dual threat, you've aged yourself. You're over the age of 48. Immediately when you say that. Yes, okay? But if you think at what Georgia has done, recruiting and bringing in people, let me just tell you, Justin Fields, better than Gunnar Stockton. Well, Kirby Smart didn't play him, he wasn't good enough to see the field at Georgia, had to go elsewhere to a lesser offense and didn't win the big one.
Yeah.
But I digress. Justin Fields is a better version than Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar Stockton is not just a mobile quarterback. He is a threat running the football. We saw that very in limited time, but we saw that.
We're going to see it more this year.
We're going to, I anticipate seeing a lot more. I anticipate you and I asking him to slide a great deal more than
I'm going to do a lot of this face this year.
Yeah.
Like as I'm watching him run, it's like, go, stop, go, get down, keep going.
Yeah. Because the old F-150, when it hits a wall, it goes through the wall until it meets a wall that it can't go through. And then it's not great.
Not equipped with airbags.
No, it is not.
No.
It is not. Bad things happen inside. It's like an egg dropped off a 5-story building and you have a 3rd grade understanding of engineering. So
you built it out of toothpicks and rubber bands. And so you thought that was going to be sufficient.
It's not. He's not even the best version of that. He's not even Stetson Bennett is a running. He's a mobile. He ran when needed to, wasn't design run. But how about Dwan Mathis? He was a pretty dang good version of it too. He couldn't see the field at Georgia either. What I'm trying to tell you is if you're counting on Gunnar Stockton being that next great thing, I don't know if he's even the best example to use. We've had better. Okay. First and foremost. Secondly, we kicked out a kid who again had a cannon of an arm.
Yep.
And ran pretty good. We were talking about importing and exporting. Importing touchdowns, exporting points. Brock Vandegrift. At the time, people talking about him as if he was the next great hope for Georgia. Mobile running option quarterback with a cannon of an arm. He flamed out, no longer playing, couldn't hack it at Kentucky. I'm trying to tell you all, I think Gunnar Stockton is going to be fine, but I can give myself a little bit of bucket-worthy stomach cramps.
By no means is it a sure thing.
It's not a sure thing, guys. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Now, on the other hand, let's go to what is working for Gunnar Stockton and what he should be rated higher than. He should be rated higher because he came in adverse conditions and didn't bat an eye. At the quarterback position, you can be all-world talent physically. And for those of you who are older than most, Jamarcus Russell, Oakland Raiders, LSU quarterback, okay? All physical intangibles. Not in the head, couldn't focus, couldn't get it together, fell apart and just wilted. We've seen this many, many times of players. When you think of Gunnar Stockton, adverse conditions, mentally exhausting, came in, didn't bat an eye in cleanup duty, in high performance games against Notre Dame with very limited practice, very limited reps, and reps matter to quarterbacks and wide receivers. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this show. Timing is crucial, and understanding the little tiny physical features of nonverbal communication. So key. He did fine. Everybody, when I ask people, why is he rated, they say, well, that Notre Dame game, he didn't perform very well. Yes, he did. I don't know how to tell you. He was not the reason Georgia lost. I will beat that drum until I burst a hole in it. He was the reason that we were in closer than we should have been.
Played great.
He played great in that game. Against the top talent, he plays up. Guys want to play with him. Guys want to be with him. He is the all-time record holder of anything Georgia football in high school. And this just in, here's my biggest indication that things are probably going to go well for him.
Okay.
Kirby Smart has entrusted him to be after Carson Beck. Now, here is how Kirby Smart operates. Seniority matters to Kirby. He has said it takes a year at minimum, 2 years likely to go ahead and get SEC ready. He's come out and said that. Again, it's not a secret. So if you play early on, you are a stud among studs. KJ Bolden, Malachi Starks, CJ. Oh, okay. Kirby Smart's chosen him because he understands that to get the best case scenario for Georgia, he right now is it. And if he is not, you're asking for lightning in a bottle with another Stetson Bennett. And I don't know if we have that on the roster right now because those only come around once in a generation.
Literally a lifetime. Once in a lifetime.
Literally. He holds all the records. He played in adverse conditions. The mental aspect is there. That's not a question with Gunnar Stockton. It is not a question if he's mentally sufficient for this role. He proved that already. That's a check already done. The question marks, longevity, reps, and can he withstand the injury of running the ball, because he's going to run, and still perform in Mike Bobo's offense, getting the ball down the field, Daniel. And can his receivers catch? These are the questions that are out there. Mentally, it's already done.
I will tell you this. I'm old enough to remember a young Georgia quarterback named Carson Beck. Now I'm dating myself a little bit with that reference, but for those of you that remember him, the young man's name was Carson Beck, and he was at Georgia. And the thing about Carson Beck was he was physically ready. He had all the tools physically.
Here we go.
But mentally, it wasn't in there. Like, it wasn't happening. The moment was too big for him. It was not. Like, he did not rise to the occasion. Mentally, he wasn't up to the task. I will just tell you unequivocally, if you tell me you can either choose a quarterback who is mentally locked in, no doubter. Physically, there's some question marks. We'll see. Or you can have the opposite. Physically locked in, no doubter. Mentally, there's some question marks. We'll see. I will take the Gunnar Stockton in that equation. I will take the kid who I know I can depend on in the big moment, the gamer. I will take him 10 times out of 10, and I will trust that there will be enough talent around him, enough scheme, enough whatever, that he's going to be able to mitigate some of the physical limitations that he might have. He is Clint. I am Daniel. We are the Locked On Bulldogs podcast, and we will be back later this week talking more things Georgia football, and we'll see you guys then.
See ya.